the NFT project Crash Test Joyride, a gentleman named DL the Architect. As usual, if you enjoy this daily NFT content, make sure that you hit the like button and smash the subscribe button. It really helps us out. And as always, nothing in this video is financial advice. We are not financial advisors. The NFT space is incredibly risky, so always do your own research. And without any more ado, DL the Architect, the artist behind Test Joyride, how are you?
Hey, Pio. Hey, Nick. Hey. Hey, world. Happy to be here.
So let's start off with the most obvious question that you've been ready to answer. What is your full name and address? No, maybe
Hey,
not. Maybe not the starting place.
that'll drop when the floor rises.
Okay.
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 Is that the metric? So you reveal yourself when the floor rises? What does the floor need to be in order for you to reveal your name and address out of curiosity?
I feel like the floor has to be some sort of concrete foundation without it dropping below, because once people get my address,
Yeah,
I'm in
they may
trouble.
get angry and then they're gonna be like, "Yo, where's the floor? Can devs do something?"
I'm here in the best I can say is that I'm here in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, New York.
Okay.
I've been here for about a couple of years. And myself and the teammates, we're all Canadians.
Okay, yeah, I heard a little
Okay.
Canadian accent, and I think Bed-Stuy makes sense for people that aren't familiar with New York. Like Bed-Stuy is definitely, I think a lot of people think Williamsburg is what Bed-Stuy actually is, and it's a place that a lot of artists live. It's a very it's a developing section of New York, and I'm not terribly surprised that you're from there. Just to kick things off for everybody, to give background, the reason I wanted to have you on is because I'm personally a big fan of the artwork for this project.
Let's really emphasize that and clarify that. I didn't mean to interrupt you there, Pio, but people do need to know just kind of some of the biases that exist here. Pio is a die-hard fan of Crash Test Joyride and mentions it on about 90% of our shows. Our Discord is now heavily familiar with the fact that he is a big fan. I own a couple myself as well, so
Do you? I didn't
I
know
do
that.
enjoy the art. Maybe I only own it through our shared wallet, actually, now that I
Okay.
think about it. But
Okay.
I got behind that, and I am a fan. I don't know if I actually have it in my personal wallet. I'll have to go check. But I feel like I do.
You actually might. But anyway, yeah. So what attracted to us to this initially was the website. Like the artwork on the website looked really great, and this is before the Joyriders revealed, and the supply of the collection was 4,444 mints. If I recall, it was like a very affordable mint cost. So the general feel of the project, right? Like in the NFT space, a lot of times feel is a big indicator of whether people buy in. And so that led to the sellout. And then, there were a couple days pre-reveal where the project kind of, traded up and down. And then after the reveal came the pump, right? And that came on the back of the artwork being revealed, and everyone just being like, this artwork is so dope, and it was original. It is original, I should say, and it fulfills that sort of like Brooklyn, New York hip hop aesthetic, and I think that's what's created the community that you have, which is really like passionate from what I've seen. So I wanted to ask you, DL, what are the origins of the project? How did it come about? How did you come into the NFT space? And I know you have a couple co-founders too, so I'd just love to hear the sort of origin story of Crash Test Joyride.
Yeah, definitely. And happy to hear that you guys are a fan, or at least Pio's a fan. Hopefully we can make Nick a fan by the end of this. No, I grew up with an interest and a passion for art and illustration. I think my earliest memory of kind of like a PSP related project or something like that was in third grade. I asked my third grade teacher if I could draw a kind of icon, a kind of cartoon, rather than my name on test papers. And I was the only one who did it. I felt like I was very early in the NFT PFP space while doing that. I went on and kind of pursued art and fabrication in high school, and in college I pursued architecture, and that's where the name comes from, DL the Architect. I did my undergrad and my master's in architecture, Currently in New York, also practicing as an architect. Graduated from the Harvard Graduate School of Design from architecture, and it's a huge influence in my life. But it's not something that I can kind of wrap myself around and put myself in a box. So I always felt like there was more to give in design and art than just in the field of architecture. The late Virgil Abloh has always been a large inspiration from me. I was lucky enough and fortunate enough to attend his lecture in 2017 at the GSD, where I also learned that he also came up and trained and studied in his master's as an architecture student as well. But he was able to use his platform and his talents to kind of spread out and do a lot of design and art outside of the kind of direct architecture field. And that's something that I've been looking for, and something that allows me to kind of look for some expression beyond the architecture field. And I grew up with the two other co-founders in Vancouver, Perm and DeFi, Permanent Marker and DeFi Senpai. And those two guys are geniuses in their own right. Permanent Marker, he has a background and has worked in one of the FANG companies. And DeFi is a full-time trader and full-time in the crypto space as well too. And I feel like we just kind of, the three of us came together and filled out all the missing spots for this kind of project to happen. It happened probably about in October. Permanent Marker and I, we were just on a call. He had this idea, he kind of dropped it, and it started off as an experiment, but the further we got into doing it, as the art progressed, the vision just became clarified, more real, and the ceiling and our vision just continued to grow. So from there, we just kind of wanted to produce a project that was different, but at the same time represented in authenticity, where we're coming from, our personal taste, and something that is just like kind of original. I feel like the art is a little bit more original, a little bit more different, because I'm definitely new to the NFT space. My two partners are the ones that really got me into it and introduced me. I didn't really look at too many references while I was making these. Probably the only one that I kind of check out in terms of how to make one was Creatures. That was probably my biggest influence as I was doing this.
I could see that. And Danny's another Brooklyn artist and approached it, really with an art first mentality, which I think it's pretty apparent you did too. But one thing that I really noticed, because I bought a few of these initially, and then before I bought more, I obviously, took a look at the community and tried to understand. And I noticed that there was like a cult following a little bit, right? It's not like the numbers of community members, the numbers of Discord followers, Twitter followers, those weren't through the roof, but everybody that was in the community seemed really excited about the project. And when I would post about the project on Twitter, a lot of people would get back to me. What can you say about that community? Like, what's that meant to you, and how do you look at that kind of moving forward?
Yeah, everybody on the Joyride is definitely a passionate member. The Joyriders are very passionate about the project, and I get a lot of support from them. I get a lot of motivation and confidence from our community, and I feel like the kind of degree of interaction that we have with our community is something that stems from our marketing strategy from the beginning and how it has been going up until now. So we've kind of not really put a lot of money yet into how the marketing has developed. It's really been quite organic through word of mouth and just from people sharing it themselves. That's something that is going to change a little bit as this clothing collection is drawing near. But I feel like just doing things kind of from the mud is something that really helped us get that kind of concentrated passion about it.
I'm sort of wondering, I made the joke about your name and address, which obviously is not necessary, but I'm wondering, like, to what degree of criminal activity were you involved in that drove you to, for the sort of anonymous approach of things? In all seriousness, it's a conversation that we do have every morning on our space, where some of the projects that are dropping right now have anonymous teams, and we're like, well, why not have 100 anonymous people on that team? Like, why don't they make it a giant enterprise, since there's no requirement? But it's something to me that's always it's an interesting thing. You know, we started in this space, Bored Ape Yacht Club, a lot of other places. I'm a holder of Bored Ape Yacht Club, holder of a lot of anonymous projects as well. But I'm curious, you know, as the space has progressed over time, I mean, your background sounds pretty legit, as well as your team. Is that something more driven from like the spray paint culture? Is it like what's the what's the drive there?
I'm not sure if showing my face would actually benefit the project or not. I think that a lot of the fear and uncertainty and doubt comes from the original mint condition or a situation where people, you know, want to know everything about the team before it drops because they're scared of getting rugged, right?
Yeah.
At this point, it's quite obvious that that's not going to happen with this project. We're serious about it. And leading up to the mint, I think the best thing that we did was just provide as much transparency as we could. We held multiple Twitter spaces where we just kind of like talked about ourselves, our background, gave everything except the name and the address. Yeah.
And did you say that you went to Harvard grad school for architecture, like Harvard in Boston?
Yeah, that's right. It's a 4-year program. Studied there, and yeah, it's something that I'm still very passionate about, and something that I think has allowed me to kind of develop different intuitions for this kind of project. In terms of like the way that it's the algorithmic design of this kind of thing is very natural for me to think about, as well as just like incorporating the big picture within the small details. So bringing swatches and colors, palettes across multiple scales, and thinking of the whole collection, both in the physical and the digital, as something that is an entire piece of art in itself as a singular gesture. So I think there's a lot of crossovers, and probably something that's going to manifest itself in future work that CTGR does.
Someone says you sound Canadian, and I don't think that's coincidental there to that commenter.
He said he was.
It has to do with the fact that that's where he's from. So, you know, a lot of people wonder why people sound the way that they do. Well, that's because that's where he's from. So, in terms of, so this project is, it seems very, you know, artist driven. When you mentioned Creature World, that historically, the art was pretty exciting. I can see the inspiration behind it as well. Some of the inspirations coming from Creature World. You know, one of the downsides of Creature World, or one of the issues, was that we saw Danny ran into some issues later on when people were like, well, yo, this isn't like the sort of thing that we were expecting. Now, let's be clear. We run into this as well. There's one expectation that people have of an NFT project, and it has nothing to do with the art. It has solely to do with the floor price. Now, none of that is within our control fundamentally, unless you decide to, you know, cross over into unethical activities, which I do not encourage anybody to do, and really think it's a short-term thing anyways. Like, unless you own the entire project, you still can't control the floor price. And for most of these, what's so insane is how the floor price is dictated by 5% of the market. Like, there's a small number when you look at any given project. I don't know, you know, what the number listed of Crash Test Joyride is, but in general, it's pretty insane how large of an influence a small number of, you know, holders have over any given project. But like, what are you thinking over the long term as it applies to this project in terms of things that, because I feel like the roadmap has been sort of laid out for the vast majority of projects. We're going to drop an NFT. We're going to drop merch. Sometimes we start throwing games in there. Or like if you're like us, we're coming up with a hybrid game. If there's different sorts of things. We have what we believe is a differentiator, but I'm curious what you think, moving forward from the business side of things, how you think about that on a project basis.
Yeah, Nick. Well, I think the first thing is that, just to correct you a little bit, it's not merch. That's the thing, is
Shit.
that it's a it's actually a full collection. It's going to be a full collection of apparel. We're actually intentionally starting this apparel line as something that is, coincident but and parallel with the NFT project. But it's not something that comes second to the NFTs. And I feel like that's something that's really important to understand for this project, because we see it as something that, well, for those interested in the floor plates, I feel like the interest of the collection and the success of the physical aspect of CTJR is something that is going to be really advantageous for us in the long run, by allowing people who aren't actually interested in the digital space and the NFT space at all to easily get onboarded into the project. I feel like that's a responsibility for all NFT projects, is to kind of like bring others into this space. And as something, as we define ourselves as this brand of, we're an NFT brand, we're an NFT PFP brand, but we're also a streetwear influenced fashion brand. That's our intention. And so this collection is a limited drop, the capsule collection. This is a sneak peek, just a small portion of it, but it's a full collection of clothing as well as non-clothing lifestyle accessories. And our intention is to kind of release both physical things and digital things, kind of in a self-reflexive manner. So that's our business strategy. We've kind of started that and stated that from the beginning. And we don't really see any other project doing it in the same way that we are trying to do it. You've seen projects like from established streetwear brands, for example, like Bobby Hundred's Atom Bomb project, and that's doing super well, but they are a streetwear physical kind of apparel and accessory brand to begin with. That's where they bring their interest, and that's where everybody kind of knows them from. And then they're bridging the digital and physical divide by bringing their NFTs and kind of mixing the. I don't know fully what those guys have planned for the future, so I won't suppose to say, but we're doing it the other way, and we see a lot of parallels between streetwear culture from the 90s and the 2000s, offered community based around style and aesthetic to young people, or people who just fucked with the vision. And we see that the same thing happening with NFTs, and we just want to go the other direction and kind of create a kind of universe of both digital and physical things with that. So the floor plate is what it is. We feel like it's going to be strong in the long term as we kind of continually fulfill what we're saying we're going to do, and as we hopefully get more attention from people outside of the NFT community.
That's awesome, man. And on the merch front, I think that you made
It's not
some
merch.
excuse me, on the collection, the clothing line front,
Right.
I think you made really good points. And one point that I think is worth mentioning is, like, in a case like Bored Ape Yacht Club, right? Like, I have a Mutant Ape, I have the Mutant Ape sweatshirt and the hat. Nick's got all the Bored Ape gear. You kind of buy that, and that's merch, right? I think it would be appropriate to call that merch. You buy that because you have the NFT. The NFT was a big hit, and now you want to like rep it with some physical merch. I feel like with the Crash Test Joyride clothing, the expectation from the beginning was everyone was like, this is going to be like really dope clothing, right? Because when it's an art-driven project and the artwork of the project is what's attracting people, and everything so far in the art direction, obviously this is subjective, but in my opinion, everything in the art direction has been strong. When you see the clothing, then you just expect that to also be done in the same kind of of like, high class way, just like very, very strong. And so I think that's the kind of distinction there, is that with this clothing line, the expectation is that it's going to be really good based on the other, work that you've put out so far. Nick, it seemed like you had a question. Did you have a follow-up?
Well, no. I mean, I think like when I ask the question, I'm thinking from the perspective in the NFT space, all of the NFT projects are figuring out like we're paving the path. Like there is no playbook as it applies here. It's always interesting speaking with traditional, digital business people, people who've like built tech companies and stuff like that. And I have, let me just tell you about the size of my network real quick. In terms of the network that I have is in the more traditional tech business world, essentially. And when you talk to them, we just can't follow all the same playbooks. Obviously, part of it still matters. Like, do you have a strategy or don't you have a strategy? Can you hire or can't you hire? Like, these are all things which are fundamental to any business. But I guess more what it comes down to is like how one delivers value to their NFT holders is something that I think we're all trying to figure out what that is.
Right.
One of the biggest struggles is that like when you look at the value of some of these things, like if we think about, have I received $300,000 of value out of Bored Ape Yacht Club? Technically, yes. I've extracted that amount out of the ecosystem. But putting that aside for a minute, that's where all of the value came from, was the fact that I literally took cash out of the ecosystem and now have money in a bank account somewhere thanks to my interaction with that business. Maybe that's all that there is to it, but they would have probably argued that that's not the value that they deliver. In fact, that would be a bad thing if that was their core value. But you have to say, like, man, how do I justify that, and what else would I pay the sort of money for, and what that plan is. So that's kind of where that question came from. Not to say like it wasn't to denigrate the idea of having merch on there. I think it's more of just saying like.
I mean, it's always a question is where does the value come from? And it's something that, like, as you said, it's like, since we're so, early in kind of like forging this space, a lot of the times it's an experiment. And also like kind of, you're making it up as you go, and you're experimenting, and you're saying, hey, this hasn't been done before. I think it could be valuable, and you just go for it. I think that, for me, it's value in a, you can see like NFTs in different ways. I think that in one way you can see it as a stock. So, like there's a limited number of these just things, and people trade them, and they just, the value rises and falls just based on, scarcity of the actual, just like the NFT itself. And then the other side of the value comes from the fact that you could also see it as like kind of a VIP pass, or like a backstage pass to like other things that are also in limited quantities, just based on the fact that, there's only so many people that actually hold these NFTs. So in that way, I think that we're going to be rewarding our holders in a number of ways with this clothing drop. I think that well, one of them is okay. So the clothing, as we want to onboard people who aren't at all familiar with the NFT side of this project, much of the clothing will be accessible to the general public. However, the ideas that we've been talking about of how our holders actually get rewarded for being holders. One, there's definitely going to be a kind of like early access in the idea of like a NFT mint drop. It's going to be like a whitelist kind of thing for all the holders who want to purchase. So that's one, that's an obvious one. The other one is that since there are multiple colors, styles, and designs for these projects, we're taking from the NFT kind of like side of things, the idea of like a legendary status for some of the NFT. Like I think we have like 15 legendaries in our collection of NFTs, but there's also going to be a select and limited number of legendary pieces of apparel which feature kind of like elaborate and luxurious variations of the material that is actually kind of like being used to embellish and embroider the apparel that we have. So that will just be given out at random, and then only to the holders. That's something I think they're all going to be very kind of like high-end streetwear kind of pieces. So all of them are going to be of quality, but these ones are kind of like the legendary pieces. So that's another thing that we've been thinking of. And then the third thing that we are thinking of is that there's going to be just exclusive pieces in the collection for holders, and these are things that tenants that we want to maintain throughout not just this collection but future collections as well.
Awesome. And the kind of cultural side, we've been talking about this, the sort of hip hop influenced streetwear. Ty Dolla $ign, big name rapper, millions of Twitter followers, well known in the hip hop industry. He bought this project, I think, just because he was interested. Someone like sent him a picture and he thought it was dope and he bought it, right? Like, you guys didn't have any connection with him. He just went and bought it.
Yeah, not yet.
Okay. And so, like, do you anticipate more like hip hop artists, like people from that culture, to get involved? And what did you think when Ty Dolla $ign bought in?
We loved it, of course. I listened to Ty Dolla's music. He's the king of features. And he's he knows good style when he sees it. What can I say? I would love for people in the hip hop world, both in America and worldwide, to be people that would wear our stuff. That's a dream.
Absolutely. And so I guess last but not least, we talked about the clothing line. I think a lot of people have talked about maybe what's coming for the Joyriders themselves. Can you spill the beans on that at all?
Yeah, so we're doing something as well that is a little bit different from other things that we've seen. Something that we've hashed out a lot behind the scenes, but we're going with an idea, something called brushes. So in the way that Bay C kind of made the mutant apes, and they kind of made a second rendition of them. That's an interesting thing to do, but I think it was for us it's a little bit different in the sense that we're going with 3 themed brushes from 3 different artists. Part of our mission at CT Joyride, I think, is to also like use our platform to put on other artists and other creators, both within the community and just stuff that we enjoy. So those 3 different brushes are going to come out and be distributed at random to people everybody who has the NFT has a serum to make that happen. 2 of the brushes are going to be a little bit more rare than one of the brushes. What I can say is that one of the brushes will be a kind of Studio Ghibli anime Japanese graphics inspired drop. So that's good that you have the Maneki Nico NFT up there. The idea for how many we're gonna do, so there's gonna be the one that you have that's not gonna be burned. Then there's gonna be the one that is kind of one of the 3 brushes. And then we're going to probably release maybe like a very limited number, maybe like 500 of each, just for additional mint. We're probably going to find ourselves around the 10K mark by the end of it.
Okay. So a little bit of a inspiration pulled from Mutant Ape Yacht Club, sounds like, with your own spin. And I'm sure everyone's excited about the art because, everything that you've done so far, again, in my opinion, you've nailed from an art perspective. Nick, do you have any other questions for DL?
Not really. I'm just thinking about the overall roadmap. A lot of the questions that come from are more self-reflective in the sense that, like, we have our own NFT that we're developing, and so observing how other people are building the business. Well, a few things. One, like, had you been buying NFT, like, outside of the fact that there's money available in this space for people who are talented? What was what brought you into the NFT space, and like what got you motivated to create this project in the first place?
Yeah, from the origin, it was really a launch pad for me to kind of like have creative control over a kind of a universe that of my own creation. So from a selfish perspective, that was really what brought me in. And then what kept me here was just like realizing what all this stuff is about. You know, it is about the art, but it's like world building. It's creating communities, and it's giving a platform and power to kind of a mission that we can choose. So I don't know. It's a lot more interesting and fascinating than when I started out for me. So it's a little bit difficult to answer that question because things are getting muddied now that I've kind of been in this world for what seems like a long time, but it's probably been only like 4 or 5 months.
Yeah, it's a saturated market right now, or becoming saturated, and what it's becoming saturated with is a mixture of what you're trying to do is cut through the noise of those projects that have legit teams that are actually building things and full-time contributing to it versus those that are basically just rugging the entire ecosystem. And there's a spectrum just within the rugs of those who are, like sort of slow draining the project, and then those that are just hard rugs. But yeah, it's interesting to see what NFT projects, like, were you degenning into different NFT projects? Like, when you saw the NFT space, what was your like first move into it?
Yeah. Like I said, I think that probably the biggest inspiration has been from creatures, just based on the fact that they're doing something different. They're artistic and they kind of stand for something that is not, it looks like they took a risk, and they just wanted to do something that they believed in, and it worked out for them. I think that's a good kind of indicator of successful projects. It's like ones that don't rely on the kind of paved path, but ones that kind of just go full on into their own vision. Other ones just like that come to mind would be Doodles for sure, also a Vancouver-based team. I just like their art, and they just operate like such a professional business. So that's definitely admirable from a business side. But then there's also other projects that don't get a lot of love in the PFP space, but there's like a ton of photographers out there doing their thing that are releasing NFTs. We were just on a spaces with one of them. Pierre is a very talented photographer and somebody that we'd love to work with in the future. Perhaps do some collaborations with, photographing the collections. And so those three are probably the ones that I'm looking to a lot these days, as well as I definitely keep tabs on Atom Bomb Squad's project just to see how they are navigating the bridge between physical and digital. It's really interesting, and Bobby Hundreds is a super smart guy, so you can learn a lot from him.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but do we want to tell everyone now or later that we've acquired your project? Like, at what point do we want to make that announcement?
This isn't for sale, man. This is part of my resume. So,
bravo, DL.
No,
well, Pio clearly doesn't know which team he's on over here, so that's a little bit unfortunate. But
yeah.
He's still technically a co-founder. So,
we've expanded our team a little bit. We started off as 3, and we brought on a community manager as we're building and expanding outwards. Cosmos from the community. He's just been an outspoken figure, great leader within the space, and somebody that we desperately needed to kind of like bridge that divide. As the 3 of us are fulfilling the roadmap, we need a kind of general on the ground amongst the people to kind of give us ideas of allow us to bounce ideas off of as well too, of things that we don't see. He's in there 24/7, so that's great. Currently collaborating with a very talented graphics artist out of Toronto, who's going to give our graphics and website for the apparel side quite the glow up. And in addition, moving forward, I think one of our challenges from a business perspective is trying not to do everything ourselves. So all 3 of us are super ambitious and perfectionists, and we just want to make sure everything is done right. But the hardest part has been focusing on the things that we are good at and allowing other people to do the things that they have expertise in and we don't necessarily, allowing us to, you know, give a little bit of free time to fulfill that roadmap. So our next step to build out our team, we're looking for somebody, currently looking for somebody who will be helping us doing our branding and marketing, and kind of both for the digital and especially for the physical sense.
Love it. Pio, you're fully muted. No one can hear you. Still can't hear you. I'm not joking, so you need to accept that I would not make a prank on you at this moment in time. So what I would suggest is you just switch the mic that you're going through to come from your computer.
I got one more piece though. As Pio's figuring out his technical side. The hat is not part of the CTJR collection. This is a very talented New York-based artist and creator, I&I Vision. The hoodie is actually one of the samples. This is not one of the colors that we're going to be using, but the hoodie is one of the blank samples. No design on it yet, but you can see the fit. Just kind of do a stand up. This is the fit.
Got a model in.
There we go.
This is I'm 6'2". This is a medium. So, you know, it's an oversized fit, made in America, both from all the way from the cotton to the cutting and sewing. It's super heavyweight, and you know, I wear this thing every day. It's awesome. So, a little bit more of a CP. We're going to be doing more reveals as we kind of move forward and towards the first drop.
Love it. Well, we appreciate you joining. Pio apparently is incapable of speaking. Can't even switch his mic. Can
you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Oh, you can?
Yes.
Oh, okay, cool. Well, hey, I'm glad that I was able to fix this. Everybody, you know, I hope you enjoyed listening to DL. This was a great interview, in my opinion. DL, thank you.
This is a great interview, primarily hosted by me. So thank you. I'd like to just pat myself on the back for this one. Crushed it again. You're welcome.
But thank you for coming on, man. Any last message to the Joyriders out there?
Just stay tuned. You know, great things are coming, and we appreciate your patience with it all. And you know, we would be nothing without you guys. So,
well, really appreciate you taking the time today. If you enjoyed this interview, remember to smash that subscribe, lick the like button, not on your phone. And we'll see you in the next episode. We may even be back in a few minutes. I don't know. It sounds.
I think we are going to be, maybe. I don't know.
Sounds ridiculous.
Thanks for joining us, DL, man. Shout out to the Joyriders.
Have a great one.